A completely yellow, opaque, disgusting headlight that you can barely see through becomes the starting point of a transformation that looks almost unbelievable when you understand what is actually happening at a physical and chemical level. A white paste is applied across the entire surface of the headlight, thick, uneven, and heavy, spreading into every corner of the cloudy plastic lens. A rag presses into it with firm, controlled pressure, moving in slow circular motions, and within moments the dull fog begins to break apart. The surface starts reacting immediately. The yellow haze that looked permanent begins to dissolve under the pressure of simple friction. Within seconds, the same headlight that looked completely ruined starts turning clearer, sharper, and more transparent, until it looks almost identical to how it appeared when it first came out of the factory. That transformation costs exactly $1, just $1 worth of basic materials that most people already have sitting in a bathroom cabinet, and it can literally decide whether a vehicle passes or fails a safety inspection depending on how strict the testing standards are. This is not an exaggeration, and it is not a trick designed to sell you something. What you are witnessing is a simple but powerful combination of surface chemistry and controlled abrasion, something that exists in everyday materials, but is rarely explained in a way that feels accessible. The reason it feels surprising is not because it is complicated, but because it is usually hidden behind expensive services, professional branding, and technical language that makes a simple process feel much more advanced than it really is. Once you understand what is actually happening on that plastic surface, the idea of paying large amounts of money for headlight restoration starts to feel very different, almost unnecessary in many cases. If you look at most cars on the road, you will notice the same pattern repeating again and again. Headlights that were once crystal clear slowly become yellow, foggy, milky, and cloudy over time. Most people assume this is just normal aging or dirt buildup, but that is not what is happening. This is oxidation, a chemical reaction that affects polycarbonate plastic when it is exposed to ultraviolet radiation from sunlight for long periods. Every day the car sits outside. UV rays slowly break down the outermost molecular layer of the headlight lens. This does not destroy the entire structure. Instead, it damages only the surface, creating a thin, rough layer that scatters light instead of allowing it to pass cleanly through. This scattering effect is what causes headlights to look dim or discolored at night. It is not that the light source becomes weak. It is that the lens itself becomes a filter that distorts and diffuses the beam. And because this damage is only on the outer layer, most people do not realize that the core material underneath is still perfectly clear and intact. The real problem is only a thin surface film that has been chemically altered by environmental exposure over time. In most inspection systems, this visual degradation becomes a major issue. A cloudy headlight is often treated as a safety problem because it affects visibility and beam projection. So when a vehicle is inspected, the condition of the headlights can become a deciding factor in whether the car passes or fails. Once this issue is identified, the owner is usually presented with expensive solutions that seem unavoidable. One option is a professional restoration service that can cost around $150 or more. Another option is a full headlight replacement that can go up to $800 per unit, or even higher, depending on the vehicle model and manufacturer. Both of these solutions appear technical and necessary, but at their core they are addressing the same problem: a thin, oxidized layer on the surface of the lens. That layer is extremely shallow, often measured in microns, which means it is not structural damage. It does not go deep into the plastic. It only affects the surface clarity. However, because it is bonded chemically to the outer layer, simple cleaning methods like soap, water, or standard cleaners cannot remove it. This is where professional restoration methods come in. Most commercial services use wet sanding techniques, where progressively finer grades of sandpaper are used to physically remove the oxidized layer. This method works because it physically strips away the damaged surface until fresh plastic is exposed. However, there is a hidden drawback that most customers are never told about. Even very fine sanding creates microscopic scratches on the surface of the polycarbonate. These scratches are not visible at first, but they change the way light interacts with the lens. Those microscopic scratches become new weak points where oxidation can begin again much faster. This is why many professionally restored headlights start to turn yellow again within a relatively short period, sometimes within 12 to 24 months. The surface has been cleaned, but it has also been mechanically altered in a way that makes it more vulnerable in the long term. This creates a cycle where the same problem returns repeatedly, leading to repeated service costs over time. However, there is a much simpler alternative that relies on everyday household materials, a combination of baking soda and white toothpaste. Baking soda is a mild abrasive compound that can gently break down surface oxidation without aggressively cutting into the plastic. White toothpaste contains hydrated silica, a very fine polishing agent designed to clean enamel and remove surface stains without damaging underlying material. When combined, these two substances form a balanced abrasive paste that can remove oxidation while also polishing the exposed surface in a controlled way. To understand why this works, it helps to imagine the headlight surface at a microscopic level. The yellow layer is not dirt sitting on top of the plastic. It is the actual outer layer of the plastic that has been chemically degraded by UV exposure. It sits like a thin, damaged shell over the clear material underneath. The goal is not to scrub aggressively, but to carefully remove only that damaged layer while preserving the healthy plastic beneath it. The process begins with preparation. The headlight surface must be completely dry because moisture reduces the effectiveness of the abrasive contact. Once dry, baking soda and white toothpaste are mixed in roughly equal amounts until they form a thick paste. The consistency should be dense enough to stay in place on the vertical headlight surface without dripping, similar to a soft cream or heavy paste that holds its shape. Once prepared, the paste is applied generously across the entire headlight. Every yellow, cloudy, and foggy area is fully covered to ensure even treatment. Then a microfiber cloth is used to begin the polishing process. The paste is worked into the surface using firm, circular motions. This motion is important because it distributes pressure evenly across the surface, preventing directional scratch patterns and ensuring consistent removal of the oxidized layer. As the process continues, a visible transformation begins to appear within the paste itself. It gradually changes color from white to yellowish, and then slowly to a darker brown shade. This color shift is a direct visual indicator of oxidation being removed from the surface. The darker the paste becomes, the more degraded material has been lifted from the headlight lens. This provides real-time feedback that the process is actively working. Each section of the headlight is treated for around 60 seconds or longer, depending on the level of oxidation. Once the full surface has been worked, it is rinsed thoroughly with clean water under proper pressure to remove all remaining residue. Any leftover paste must be cleared completely to avoid uneven drying or surface marks. After rinsing, the headlight is dried carefully using a clean cloth. At this stage, the result becomes immediately visible. The yellow haze disappears completely, the foggy layer is gone, and the plastic underneath appears clear and smooth again. Light can now pass through the lens without distortion, which improves nighttime visibility and restores proper beam projection. What looked like permanent damage only minutes earlier now appears as a clean, restored surface. There is also an optional finishing step that increases durability. A UV protective clear coat spray can be applied over the restored surface to slow down future oxidation. This protective layer helps block ultraviolet exposure and extends the clarity of the headlight over time. Without it, oxidation may return within 12 to 18 months depending on environmental conditions. With it, the clarity can last significantly longer, often extending multiple years before any visible fogging returns. When everything is broken down, the contrast becomes extremely clear. The total cost of this entire process using household materials is approximately $1. Even with protective coating included, the cost remains extremely low. Compared to professional services that charge around $150 or more, or full replacements that can reach hundreds of dollars per headlight, the difference is massive. What makes this important is not just the cost savings, but the realization that the problem itself is far simpler than it is usually presented. A foggy headlight is not permanent damage. It is a predictable surface reaction caused by sunlight exposure over time. And once that is understood, the solution stops looking like an expensive professional service and starts looking like basic maintenance that can be done with simple materials and a few minutes of effort. The final result is clearer visibility, improved safety, and a restored headlight surface that closely resembles factory condition, achieved without complex tools or expensive intervention.